Hello, and welcome to today's Living with Crohn's live. I'm Sherry Lip, and today I'm going to be talking about learning to love food with IBD, Crohn's IBD, ulcerative colitis, other digestive issues. I love this topic because it's something that took me a while to get to. I did not love food. Probably a lot of people who have symptoms of IBD also do not love food. And it might be a while before you get there, but I'm going to talk about learning to love food again and how you can do that while still eating the foods that are right for you. So I also have to delve into a little bit of a topic on disordered eating. I'm not going to go full depth on that. I'll probably do something else on that talks more specifically about it. But in a nutshell, disordered eating is not an eating disorder. It's more where you're way off track, where you're kind of obsessed with food, but not in a positive way. Maybe more obsessed with eliminating food. It's also known as orthorexia. Orthorexia is not a diagnosis. This is not medical advice either. This is just an overview of kind of where over restriction can lead us. And there are some studies now showing that a lot of people with IBD do have orthorexia. There is an eating disorder that is associated with IBD, but it's not exclusive to IBD. The research is pretty new on that. So I don't have statistics or anything like that, but it's something that people are starting to look into more as, people with IBD tend to restrict food. And so so my goal is to get as wide a variety of food as we can as we begin to heal, and not fear adding those foods in, which is what I see a lot of. So for me, learning to love food took a long time. I was really afraid of everything. Even when I was feeling better, sometimes I would experiment a little bit and it wouldn't go well. And so I would just leave that food out, even though maybe it was SCD, it's a healthy food. I just was afraid of eating it. So we get very narrow in what we eat sometimes when we're trying to heal, which is good. That's why I've developed a 4-week, very, very specific elimination of foods before we start thinking about more, like having a plan. I think that helps people feel like they're on the right track instead of just out in the wilderness. So I'm just trying to help people get rid of that fear of food. Loving food, it's a very important part of life. Sometimes we try to suppress that when we're dealing with food restriction and digestive symptoms, but the truth is we still want good food. Maybe for a while, maybe when our symptoms are very severe, we don't really care about food that much. But as we get better, we still want really good food. I found that in my life, that I, just didn't want to go without something good. For me, I had to find a new way to make it. So let's talk a little bit about where it comes from health to disordered eating first, and then we're going to go into the more fun learning to love food. So orthorexia, signs of that are being overly, spending hours looking at ingredients, nutrition labels, obsessing over it, fear of eating with other people, or being served food that you were not in control of. So this is going to start to sound familiar. I remember looking at this list and kind of realizing where I was at, even at a point of healing. Being fearful of eating outside your house kind of goes with that last one. Being obsessed with what other people are eating and their health. And moralizing food as good or bad. So we're going to do some of that, of course, when we're trying to help our diet. Of course, we're going to be reading ingredients and choosing, but there comes a point where it goes past that, where it becomes unhealthy mentally. And so we want to avoid that by building trust in ourselves that we're making the right decision. And for me, that just came with, okay, I'm choosing to eat this or I'm not choosing to eat it. I'm not going to obsess about it. And that's why I stopped writing letters really to companies. Like I said, there was one thing I wanted, and I wanted to be able to share it with you guys, with the ketchup that I was looking at that looked good. It was from a good small company. So, and like I said, in one of my earlier podcasts, I wrote to the CEO and he wrote back. So it was directly the owner of the company. It wasn't somebody who didn't know what they're talking about. So I felt good about that, but I don't spend a lot of time. Like I said, if I don't feel like I can eat it, then I just don't buy it. I don't worry about it. And if I feel like it looks good, then I get it. And that's how I do it. I'm not saying that's how anybody else should do it, but I stopped spending so much time. I'm just like, if I don't feel comfortable with it, I'm just not going to have it. So when I looked at that list of things associated with orthorexia, I was like, I'm in like all of these. Like I don't participate. I'm afraid. And so how do we get over that fear? We can't always just eat whatever is served to us, of course. But what I started doing was, of course, I try to bring my own stuff. If I can't always, I try to, if I can, I make an arrangement to have something very plain cooked. But I stopped making a big deal about it. I remember like over explaining to somebody who was going on a business trip, and I explained it like 10 times. And she's like, I get it. I understand. You need to get out to the store. I understand. And, because I told her like so many times and it was ridiculous, and so I had to get over that part of it. It's like, I'm going to do what I can do. But the next part for me in learning to love food was learning to cook. Some people, if you don't like cooking, maybe find just a few things you can make, or maybe find somebody to help you. Maybe somebody you know is a good cook and they can help you, or maybe you can, if you have the ability, you could pay them to prepare you foods. But for me, making those foods that were really good, like really learning to cook steak the right way, it was something I had never really done in my life. And, it was always somebody else, running the grill or cooking it. And that was just not my thing when I was a kid, to make steak. But so once I learned how, it was like as good as a restaurant. And I knew exactly what the seasonings are on it. And I can cook it the way I want. Doesn't mean I'm never going to order one. That's the other thing. I do go to restaurants. I don't go a lot, especially in the last few years. But I feel comfortable now in saying I want a steak, salt and pepper only. Now, a lot of restaurants offer that now. Like I just went to one when I was on a business trip, and the seasonings actually cost like $3 extra. So I was like, totally good for me. It comes plain, and then you're supposed to add on all your stuff you want for extra money. So it was very, very easy for me to not have to worry about that. So I think getting comfortable with yourself is a very important part of learning to love food, besides coming up with those recipes. But learning to trust yourself is the most important part of learning to love food again. And that's where one of the other factors is over relying on social media. So the groups are great. I'm on social media. I'm telling you things. But getting too involved in what other people are doing can be a detriment, because you start thinking you're doing it wrong, or you shouldn't have this because somebody else, I saw somebody, was asking about beans, and somebody's like, well, I would never eat beans. But beans are allowed on STD, so if it's something you can eat, it's fine. It doesn't matter that the other person's not able to do it. That's their journey. So I eat them. I've actually been able to eat them from day one, but that is something when I'm doing my protocol, that beans are eliminated for 30 days because we want to have a nice reset. That's another thing too, is you can kind of reset by bringing it back and then adding some things on. But I want to say, when learning to love food, it's those things, finding those things and allowing yourself to like it. Instead of, it's not, oh, you don't have any willpower. It is totally natural, normal to have an emotional reaction to food. It is normal to want to join in on a social occasion and be able to have something special. It's not a lack of willpower if you're wanting those things. Especially when we're talking about kids. Kids want sweets and they want to feel a part of things. So it's learning to be able to allow yourself some freedom and choices, even if it's within SCD or GAPS or whatever you're doing. It's, for me, it was getting that variety of food. And I know some people were like, well, I have my safe foods and I'm only going to stick with those because I don't trust doing anything else. And that might be while you're healing. But once we start healing, we want to start broadening the diet, just not even just for enjoyment, but for health. We want to have a nice, diverse microbiome. And having more food allows us to do that. But my biggest thing is the mind and the body go together. So do not feel like that you're doing something wrong if you want to enjoy a food. In fact, if you do have something outside the diet, sometimes we like to pretend, oh, we never do that. But some people do. Allow it. You did it. Don't freak out about it. If you don't feel well, note that. Obviously, if you go into a flare or something, that wasn't a good thing. You might want to see a doctor. But I'm talking about mild stomach upset. Don't beat yourself up. I've done it. A lot of us have done it. But don't stress about it, because that's only going to make you feel worse. It's totally normal to do those things. And that's something it's hard to talk about. A lot of people don't want to talk about it because it's, you get that, as far as I'm concerned, you're not doing a CD if you have anything outside of it. I like to get away from that kind of thinking and just concentrate on what we can do and moving forward. So if we make a mistake, don't feel well, we move forward, we make an adjustment. I think allowing ourselves, for me, I say all foods are available to me. I'm just choosing what I'm going to have. And so knowing that it's there made me want it much less. I know I've said that before, but I don't think I can say it enough. Instead of thinking of I can't, I say I can, but I don't want to, because I have been satisfying myself with my own food. So I think learning to love food is an important part of this process. Once you get past the part where everything you eat makes you feel bad, we can start to learn to love food within our wherever we're at. So for me, I made, cooking almond flour and stuff. I started to learn to enjoy it instead of being like, this is my alternative, I can't have that. I was like, well, I'm going to find a bunch of stuff that I like. And that's why I started making my recipes and sharing them with you guys. Partially because people started asking me for them, and starting a blog was the easiest way for me to do it. And then it kind of grew from there. But as a coach, I encourage diversity. So if we can begin to add foods, and so that's what I work with people on. We go through a 30-day process, and we're like, how severe are your symptoms? Where are we? What can we start to add in within your own protocols? So you set how you want your diet to be. If you want it to be very strict, if it's SCD or GAPS or AIP, that's where we stand. And so then we add foods in that realm. If you're like, well, I want to be able to have some modification, or I need to have some modification, or this is very important to me, then we start looking at that. So then I start, I don't really care about not having the sugary foods or cakes or cookies, because I know I've defined where I'm at, and I don't need those things anymore because I make my own things. Doesn't mean I never ever want something else, but it makes it a lot easier for me to be like, I'm in control. It's not somebody else deciding. That's one thing I really emphasize. The groups are helpful, but don't over rely or overthink about what other people are doing, because it is you that you have to decide for, not somebody else. And your symptoms are your symptoms. what food you can tolerate, what food goes with your life. It might be very different. So if somebody's like, I don't understand why, this is so, different for you. It's because your life is different. Maybe you're have some family foods, some cultural foods that are very important to you. And so we want to work with that and figure out how is that a part of your life and how do we make a good substitute if you can't have that. And that's where I really started to enjoy it. It's like, okay, well, I want this. So how do I make it? How do I make this work for me? And that is how I learned to love food again with Crohn's, with maintaining remission and like not wanting to get out of control. Is just learning to accept that where I'm at, and like going from there instead of thinking about what I can't have. Just started thinking about like, what do I want? How do I make that work? The other important thing is I mentioned moralizing food. The thing about that is we don't know other people's situations with food. It might be a financial situation, family situation. We just don't know. So saying that's bad or good, I would stay away from that and just concentrate on you. We can't control, that there's not enough stuff in the store. We want snacks and stuff. It's hard to find. That's beyond our control. What other people's life situation is beyond our control. So we really need to move away from worrying about that and just think about ourselves, think about what we can do and how to make our diet work for us so that we can feel good. So that's where I stand on learning to love food. Like I said, I will get into like a little more of I wanted to be on the positive side for this episode. So I didn't want to talk too much about like eating disordered eating. That's something I might touch on later, especially if it's something you want to talk about, put in the comments or contact me. If you want to talk about it personally, contact me. Because it is an important issue. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it when it comes to IBD, like I said in the beginning, because we feel like we've done something wrong. Like we're just not strong enough to make it through, but that's not what it is. It's completely natural to start to have food affect our life. So if it's affecting in a negative way, if we're getting too far away from them, because it's not just a mental thing. It's like you might be restricting to the point of not getting enough nutrition, and good nutrition helps our bodies heal. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how to get our body to work with what we're eating when we're having symptoms. So that's something I help people with. Contact me if you need help with that. And please put in the comments if you have some, what your feelings are on this. You have a question, and definitely put in the comments if you any topics that you would like to talk about on this podcast. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in next